he starts off with it as a contradictory unity of use value and exchange value. And he identifies that the labor producing this commodity has in turn and correlatory two aspects. It has the concrete labor, such as a tinker, a tailor, a cabinet maker, and so on, and abstract labor, which is the fact that each of those workers is a part of the social aggregate or the social community of productive labor. Marx did consciously apply dialectics in the critique of political economy. He doesn't really explain very fully at all how he did that, which is why I've had to reconstruct it, or many people have worked on reconstructing it. But once you begin to see that, you appreciate how much he was a conscious dialectician, if I can put it like that. But perhaps more importantly than that, is the product of his work is full of content. It really does reveal the workings of the capitalist mode of production at a general theoretical level for the working class. So it is an essential foundation, but I will try to show that it's not complete. There are three ways in which Capital, the book, is not complete. The first is Marx clearly did intend it as a whole with volumes 2 and 3, and actually volume 4, Theories of Surplus Value. Now Engels was his editor, and as we spoke last time, he finished off volumes 2 and 3. It was actually Kautsky who published Theories of Surplus Value in 1905 to complete the work as best they could against Marx's original intention. Second type of incompleteness is that even if Marx's intention was fulfilled, was it complete? And I believe it wasn't, and I'll try to argue that in a minute, that it needed further conceptual development even for his day. But thirdly, of course, you can never be complete anyway. It's an ongoing project because the object of the study, the capitalist mode of production, is itself always changing. So therefore, the theory of it must also continually change. And anyway, it can never be complete until we get rid of the capitalist mode of production itself. In chapter 7 of volume 1 is in 2 sections. In the first section, Marx explains that without any particular society in mind, all labor processes, all social labor processes will have certain characteristics in common. They will have a duration, there will be some tools, there'll be raw materials, the worker, the producer will have some skill or not, some degree of skill, and they will apply themselves or be applied with some degree of intensity. So all of these characteristics are not specific to the capitalist mode of production. However, capitalist mode of production has put its stamp on the labor process and reshaped it according to the needs of capital. And the need of capital is capital's own expansion. So commodities are bought and sold, production takes place, and they're basically sold for more than what was paid out to buy the inputs to the process. So between these two is the production of surplus value. So for Marx, surplus value is produced in the labor process and it's realized in the sale of commodities. And it's based on the exchange of equivalent values. So there's no cheating or trickery in the buying of commodities, and there's no cheating or trickery in the selling of commodities. So where does the new value come from? It comes from the labor process. Capitalist mode of production took hold of the production process. So it took advantage of cooperation. It's an important section in volume 1, but it was always on the basis of exploitation. So when we say cooperation, maybe that should be in inverted commas. So the first workshops or putting out system, first factories and so on, they're forms of cooperation, but they're always exploitative forms of cooperation. And also it will come on to this again, but capitalism as a mode of production did increase labor productivity in quite a marked way, because it was to its advantage to do so. So what happens when capitalism takes over the mode of production or the way of producing commodities is some aspects are brought to the foreground. They're always present in different societies, but some become much more significant in the capitalist mode of the production process because they are levers for more exploitation. In other words, they're ways of increasing capital's rate of surplus value. So this is the underlying, when we talk about surplus value as such, it's got an absolutely central place in Marx's theory of the capitalist mode of production. It's the absolutely critical concept. It's the essence of capitalism, that it's production for the purpose of expanding surplus value. So what is it? Marx makes a crucial distinction between labor power and labor expended. So labor power is what's purchased by the capitalist. It's the capacity to labor. Labor expended is the expenditure of that capacity during the working day. So the working day is itself divided between necessary, which is the labor, which is the equivalent to the wage, paid labor, and surplus, unpaid labor. The ratio of unpaid to paid labor is the same for Marx as the ratio between surplus value and variable capital. Variable capital is that portion of capital which is exchanged for as a wage, and surplus value is that surplus which is added extra during the surplus labor time to the value of the commodity. The unique use value of labor power again exists in all imaginable modes of production, but in the capitalist mode of production, labor power is itself a commodity. So what is it that the capitalist is buying? What use value are they trying to obtain when they purchase labor power? The use value of labor power, and it's unique, is that it's the commodity which is capable of adding new value. So labor power as a general concept is that which produces surplus value, is the source of the surplus value. So that's surplus value as such. Now Marx moves into more particular aspects, or if you like, definitions of surplus value, or dimensions you might consider it to be. Surplus value can be increased by lengthening the working day, the duration of the total labor time. So for example, if the working day is 10 hours and it's divided 5 hours, 5 hours, I think my B is slightly misaligned to the right, actually. But in any case, if you think of that as a symmetrical, AB is equals BC, so 5 hours necessary labor time, 5 hours surplus labor time. Now the surplus labor time can simply be increased by making the working day longer. So instead of 10 hours, we have 12 hours duration. Now, so long as the wage is the same, then the worker is actually now still only getting the equivalent of 5 hours labor, but they're contributing 7 hours surplus labor. Now the ratio between these two, the 7/5 in the second case is 140%. In the first case, 5/5, 100%. This ratio is what Marx calls the rate of surplus value. So in the second case, the worker is more exploited. The rate of surplus value has increased from 100% to 140%. A second mechanism to increase surplus value is by keeping the working day the same length, but by reducing the proportion which is the necessary labor time. So instead of the 10 hours being divided 5 and 5, Marx posits that the necessary labor time is reduced to, say, just 3 hours. Okay. So the worker works the same length of time, but the value of their labor power is produced by them, its equivalent is produced by them in 3 hours rather than 5 hours. Okay, so the ratio of exploitation increases, surplus value increases, it's now 7/3 rather than 5/5. Do the arithmetic, 233%, okay? Right, now how does this come about? Basically, the concept of relative surplus value is a multi